This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Summer of cinema is here, and Pluto TV is exploding with thousands of free movies. Feel the explosive action all summer long with movies like Gladiator, Beverly Hills Cop, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Good Burger, Stealth, Four Brothers, and Star Trek. Bring the action with you and stream for free on all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never. Stream now at pluto.tv.
Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome. A quick update from my black cat Tomato, an important one at that. The update is, there's no update. He's a cat. Why would he have one? Tonight we got a compelling program for you. We will settle the age-old question. Who writes better, a stressed-out student pulling an all-nighter, or a robot, an artificial intelligence, one that never sleeps? There's a new study that pits ChatGPT, the AI writing robot, against undergraduate students with writing. Who wrote it better? We'll find out halfway through the hour. Then we'll have a veterinarian on who's definitely a science communicator and definitely an accredited doctor. And so we can do stories for education that might get me in trouble otherwise. For example, why do our dogs eat, well, you know, the stuff that comes out of their, why do dogs, well, the veterinarian isn't here yet, so I can't tell you. But we'll get the science behind that later in the hour. Tonight's going to be a great lineup. We're going to start with something super special, so let's jump in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
I want to start tonight by talking about a Canadian artist. A man who took the internet by storm, singing about life's most pressing issues, like seasonal depression, the rising cost of footlong subs, and sock tans. And he does it in this monotone way that somehow manages to sound both deeply emotional and totally dead inside. A London, Ontario native, his name is Jacob Anstey, but on TikTok he is known as Bungalow Jonathan, which sounds to me less like a pop star and more like a guy who'd rent you a basement suite and talk to you about vibes. No matter. With over 18 million likes and the kind of cult following usually reserved for Scandinavian, new-old, crime, melodrama comedy films that pay an homage to Japanese filmmaker Ozu, yet filmed by Wes Anderson. It's a strange cult. Anyway, with a cult following, he vanished from social media for a full year. No scandals, no drama. Just a man deciding he'd rather do journaling and go to therapy, reflect on what it really means to do art making, rather than scrolling endlessly through thirst traps and algorithmic despair. Disgusting behavior, frankly. I kid. Even when you're making comedic videos, disappearing to reflect on what it really means to be an artist, I admire. Anyway, now the man's back, with new music, a new perspective, and a whole new relationship to the concept of likes. We're going to talk to him, but let's hear a little bit of what made the internet fall in love with him in the first place, and maybe mildly concerned for him. Here's some audio clips of Bungalow Jonathan.
Ooh, I am hanging on by a thread. I don't know how much more that I can take. My landlord raised my rent by $27.54. What the was the point of that?
Asking the real questions. Here's the next one.
Oops, it happened again. It is 4 p.m. I haven't done anything productive, baby. Yesterday I paid $7 for a f***ing cabbage.
so stupid, but we're about to get so serious.
I am having a crisis, an existential crisis. Everything feels pointless, so I'm going to eat more chips.
I am here with Bungalow Jonathan, an artist whose name is Jacob Anstey. Jacob, I am so glad you are on my show. You are, and I say this jokingly about people who are like weird artists, that they're the greatest artists of our generation, but I actually do believe you are great. Mostly because I like Adult Swim, and I like a lot of the things that your work plays to, but also just you're amazing. Also, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, David. I appreciate that very much.
Let's talk about you logging off, not for a day, but for a whole year. You're on this trajectory, you're making these funny videos, people love them, and you just kind of disappear. What happened?
I was so burnt out from making the content, and I originally joined on TikTok because I couldn't play live shows with my band anymore. I had all of these funny ideas, like you say Adult Swim. I love Tim and Eric. I love that stuff. And as soon as I figured out how to use a green screen, I was like, all right, I got it. Now I've got this thing, and I could start posting these videos and fleshing out these tiny ideas that weren't fully fledged songs. That was like the next 2-3 years of my life. I just got really wrapped up in being a content creator and, kind of stopped making music altogether. So I was burnt out from it. I didn't want to keep making the same jokes over and over again. And I had a desire to get back into songwriting.
Get sort of back to that original place you were that made you an artist, not the direction you were going because the accolades or the people like them, or things like this?
Yeah, it obviously felt really good to have viral videos, and it felt good to get instant feedback and just have those numbers that I never experienced before. It does feel like anxiety inducing to walk away from that.
Yeah, I can imagine. But when you looked at yourself as an artist, what you did with your time, were videos like that what you wanted to be doing? I
think it came naturally. Just, I never really wanted to be a comedian, but I have always had a persona in my art. Before I hopped online, I was the lead singer of a punk band called Gene Daddy.
Heck yeah.
And I was Gene Daddy. It was like, a total rock and roll persona. And I realized then that people really love the persona. So I think when I decided to hop online and it was just me, I was like, the persona is what people are into. And that kind of naturally developed over a few months.
Yeah, with me, it's like, what is the persona? Like, who am I on the radio? It's supposed to be like me, the real person, but like some things are off limits, some things are exaggerated.
Right.
You found this book that I also found at a time in my life when I was mulling over quitting my corporate job to be a broadcaster, leaving kind of structured, good salary, that kind of thing, to go into creative work. It's called The Artist Way. Do you want to just summarize it for people who've never heard of this book? Because it applies to not only like creatives, musicians and stuff. It can apply to writing. Honestly, you can even apply it to like regular business jobs, I think.
Right. Describe
the book a bit for me and why you were so struck by it at that time.
Sure. It's a 12-week workbook. It takes 3 months and you go week by week. Every week it gives you these creative prompts. But at the core, it's asking that every single morning you write these pages called morning pages. And then there's an additional thing where once a week you should go out, take yourself on an artist date, which is just putting yourself out there and doing something that you normally wouldn't. The morning pages, the book aside, the morning pages absolutely changed it for me. Like, writing every morning, I didn't realize how much anxiety and despair I was carrying into every morning until I started this kind of meditative practice of writing every day. And that in itself just kind of cleared my mind, helped me, have creative ideas pop out after I could kind of get all of those thoughts out onto the page. But I dedicated myself to the artist's way for those 3 months, and it's a little corny, some of the things it's asking you to do. Like, I was out in the field picking wildflowers and thinking to myself, why am I doing this? But it really worked. It really worked for me. I still write the pages every day.
I'm here with Bungalow Jonathan, whose name is Jacob Anstey. I love the whiplash of how serious you are as an artist and how amazing and silly and absurd and surreal these videos that I love are. We'll be back with more Jacob in just a few minutes.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Roll baller, Alonzo ball for Buzzballs. Ready to go cocktails. Take 12.
Buzzballs just dropped their biggest blue balls.
Script says Biggie's blue balls, Lonzo. Take 13.
Blue balls just dropped their biggest buzzballs.
Let's try a vocal exercise.
Buzzballs, Biggie's, blue balls, buzzballs, Biggie's, blue balls.
Big balls just dropped. Get blue balls this season with Buzzballs.
Please drink responsibly. Buzzballs available in spirit, wine, and malt. 15% alcohol by volume. Buzzballs LLC, Carrollton, Texas.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
I am here with Bungalow Jonathan, a London, Ontario-based artist whose name is Jacob Anstey. Here's some of the videos and music he creates online.
Ooh, I am hanging on by a thread. I don't know how much more that I can take. My landlord raised my rent by $27.54. What the was the point of that?
Jacob, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I was just saying I love the whiplash of how serious our discussion is about what it means to be like an artist and take your art seriously and refocus and dedicate yourself to your art and take a 12-week book-based course from The Artist Way, and how funny your clips are. Let's dig into some of your actual work, the songs you make.
Sure.
Before your break, very funny. What's the inspiration for your music at this point in your life?
During The Artist Way, it took about 4 months until I could start writing songs again. And the first song I wrote out of that was like so vulnerable and honest, I nearly abandoned it. I was like, this is corny. This is something I would never normally do.
Yeah.
But a part of The Artist Way is just seeing those visions through to the end. And that song, it's called I'm Sorry. And it's going to be kind of the cornerstone of the new record I'm working on. And I can't picture my life without it. So at some point I was going to abandon the song altogether and ended up writing something that I truly love. And it's unlike anything I've done before. It's like a 70s folk ballad.
Yeah. It's not exactly like a surreal clip that you're seeing on TikTok with the green screen that I love. I can't get enough of that green screen.
Yeah, it's I was listening to a lot of the Beach Boys at that time, and just trying to not write off any ideas. I was also on the way to becoming a father. At the end of last summer, my son was born, and I was just taking things a little more seriously at the time. And I think some of the songs that I wrote during that time reflect how I was feeling.
More honest, less satirical. What did Bungalow Jonathan mean to you before the hiatus, though? Like, walk me through the creative stuff that, like, from these videos before your hiatus.
Sure. So I'll talk about the persona a little bit. When I was thinking about being online, I was trying to create this persona of like a washed up Vegas entertainer. Like, I had my rock and roll career, and now I'm just like chasing the money, and I'm here, like you said, kind of like some of my own personality would seep into those videos, but there is a ton of satire there. And I took a few like creative risks too, but I don't think those videos were completely me.
How did you get so good at deadpan delivery? Like, you don't have a stand-up background. Like, where did that come from? Because you are talented when it comes to that.
If you saw the studio I was working on, it was so depressing, like landlord special, gray floors. I had the ring light just blasting in my face. And I think like a lot of people commented on the deadpan look. So I definitely leaned into that at one point. Just, you know, as a stark contrast of like what I was talking about in the videos.
Yeah. And what you're working on now, is there any of that element that like these videos, these clips that I'm playing and what I love so much, is there an element, or is it completely pivoted to this like honest, deeply creative, you know, post hiatus Bungalow Jonathan?
There's always going to be a little wink and a nod in my creative work. I always love to put a little absurd joke in my writing. But it is a stark pivot, I would say. But I'm just trying not to think too much about the reception until that happens and just work on it.
Let's talk about the reception, the internet. Are you worried? Like, the internet is not the most emotionally safe place for artists, and people love you for one thing. You're going to emerge. You are emerging as perhaps another thing or a morphed thing. Mm-hmm. What do you think how do you think people are going to react to that?
Well, I'm never going to get the response from my music that I was getting with the content. And I just know that base level. But I'm going to say something a little abstract, a little crazy here.
Please do.
I've been thinking a lot about what do people want from me and how can I give that to them? And sometimes people want to see someone fail. So if they're looking at me and they're like, man, this guy dropped the ball, he is a failure, and maybe that makes them feel a little good about themselves, I actually just made that person feel good. So I'm hoping that they, even if they think I'm failing, that they're like looking at me and maybe my failure is inspiring them to take a risk of their own.
Whoa. Whoa. Like, I used to have a different radio job. The show ended, and there was this like weird like Canadian media like gossip podcast, and one guy on it was like making fun of me on it. It made me really feel bad about myself a few years ago. I wish I had that presence of thought in that moment to be like, these people feel good about themselves by making fun of me or rooting for my failure. And that's a good thing. That's such like a deep thing. Where did you come up with that?
Last night at 3 a.m. when I was thinking about our interview, I was like, you know, maybe, I don't know. People have given me the worst comments in the past, especially when I post something a little more like political. And I've been posting a few videos talking about my creative journey. And, you know, the first comment I get on the first video is, "You used to be funny."
Ooh, we love that.
Like, you know, what am I going to do, man? That guy felt great about that comment, I'm sure.
And so that kind of stuff doesn't get to you. What I don't obsessively look at it. Not that there's many people like interacting with a radio show. We're talking like one comment a week, one email a week, you know, and it's probably from my mom. But that stuff doesn't get to you. You just kind of you let it fall off the shoulder.
Oh, it gets to me. It gets to me for sure. But I'm just trying to focus on the work and not the product, I guess.
I envy you because when I quit my my tech job before I went into radio, I ruminated all the time on what it means to be creative. And I feel like now that I do this job every day, I don't get to ruminate. I don't like have this creative angst. And I miss that period of my life. And it feels like that's where you just were for a year. I'm not saying like you'll go through phases and I'm like, you know, but yeah, there's something about what you wrote, and there's an interview with you that in CBC. And yeah, you're at a very interesting time, and I hope you get to stay there. But you know, I The Artist's Way is like a really good book. Maybe I'll reread it, I think is probably what I got to do.
Definitely. It sounds like the right time. I definitely go through an existential crisis every 3 years about like, you know, especially my creative work. And it seems to be every 3 years, it's like a new era, the punk era, the content creation era. I'm just in like a new era, and it is a really exciting time. It used to be really stressful, but now I'm appreciating the time of just like, having no expectations.
Yeah. Maybe I gotta see. I'm dyslexic, but maybe I'll read it like in my e-reader, or not e-reader, ebook,
Audiobook.
Yeah, audiobook. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, you can find Bungalow Jonathan on TikTok, on Instagram, on social media. That is the artist name of Jacob Anstey. Jacob, I have loved this conversation. Thank you for being vulnerable with me and sharing your story and making such amazingly funny videos and then disappearing and not really caring what other people think and focusing what creativity means to you. Your story is inspiring to me.
Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you for having me.
I feel like we should have cracked more jokes given the content of your video.
Oh man, I'm always bad with it on the spot.
That's fine. This is better than that. All right. Thanks again, Jake. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
After the break, researchers pitted students with ChatGPT to see who the better writer was. So we'll find out who that was in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Summer's here, and Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From beach days and weddings to weekend getaways and your everyday wardrobe. Discover stylish options under $100 from tons of your favorite brands like Mango, Skims, Princess Polly, and Madewell. It's easy too with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Shop today in stores, online at Nordstrom.com, or download the Nordstrom app.
The last show with David Cooper. Procrastinate your life away with us.
The age-old question. Who writes better? A stressed-out student pulling an all-nighter, or a tireless robot and artificial intelligence that never sleeps, never snacks, and never procrastinates? A new study pitted real human essays, that is, if you consider university students real humans, but that's a topic for another day. It pitted real human essays against AI-generated ones, and the results are in. ChatGPT may have grammar, but students have soul. I'm here with someone who worked on that. He's an honorary professor at the School of Education and Lifelong Learning at the University of East Anglia in the UK. His name is Ken Hyland. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Glad to be here.
Let's start with the punchline and work back from there. Who writes better, ChatGPT or a hungover undergrad with a deadline 30 minutes ago?
Always the undergrad. It depends what you're doing with the writing. I mean, we never just write. We always write for a reason. We sit down to persuade or entertain or inform or amuse people using language that they're likely to understand and accept and enjoy. Now, when ChatGPT does this, it doesn't have any kind of conception of a readership. It's an algorithm running through a training database of billions of words that have been trawled from the web. And it doesn't have this conception of audience. So who's listening to it? Who's reading it? While it can give you a beautifully constructed essay with, no spelling mistakes, wonderful grammar, beautiful structure, it's cold, it's faceless, it lacks a human touch. So it uses, for example, very few questions. It doesn't use words like I, or very rarely uses I or we or you, or it doesn't express attitudes like beautiful, excellent, wonderful. It doesn't use hedges to kind of tone down the force of something, possibly, perhaps. It doesn't give you a stance. So what you get is a kind of fluffy, neutral, beautifully presented essay.
That's kind of amorphous. It could be the viewpoint from nowhere kind of thing.
That's right. It's beamed in from outer space. There's no human contact in there because it doesn't think. It's not trying to relate to a human, but But academic writing isn't just exchanging information. It's about interacting with readers, like any other situation. You're trying to put over an idea and persuade people to agree with that idea. And if you're not using language that engages people, then you're not going to do that.
You mentioned that AI is clean and beautifully written in terms of grammar, like it's coherent and grammatically sound.
Yeah.
Which honestly sounds like the opposite of how most students write. Is there something special in the kind of minor errors? I guess the best analogy, this will make no sense to people who don't like guitar, but people use old amps when they have electric guitars that use transistors and tubes and all kinds of old audio equipment, but the resultant sound has little errors in it, making it more warm and fuzzy. If you just digitally amplify a guitar, it sounds very cold. It's almost too accurate. Is there something special in a slight sloppiness in writing?
Yeah, I think there is. There's an individuality in every text, isn't there? When you write for publication, you send your paper off to a journal and anonymous reviewers comment on it. And I've had people write and say, oh, I know this person, it's Ken Hyland, even though it's completely blanked out and anonymous. So we all have a kind of signature. And whether that is little errors or foibles or the use of favorite words, that's an indication. That's your marker. But more generally, it's just, it lacks a personal touch. It's not communicating with you. It's giving you information.
Tell me about how you said this authoritatively. Did you have people read essays and not tell them whether they were the undergrads or AI and they had to make judgments about it?
No, we had a big collection of 145 student essays written by British undergraduates, and we on various topics, and we gave the same instruction to ChatGPT-4, told it to write essays on these topics, things like European Union, fox hunting, eating meat, the kind of things that students write, of the same length and on the same topics. And we gave it a context. You are a second year student writing an essay. And so we had these two collections, 145 texts in each, 75,000 words overall. And we ran it through a search program looking for words that express a stance or engage readers. And we found that on every count, the students wrote more engaging, more persuasive papers than the machine.
I'd be curious if you plugged the feedback that it was soulless or kind of told it what you found wrong with it. If you plug that back into ChatGPT, asked it to update the essays, what you would get.
Yeah, actually, that's a good thought, because things are changing all the time.
Can I get a citation on the next paper, please?
Because we're always one step behind, aren't we? I mean, there is this Cold War going on between AI and identifying texts that are written by AI. And there are programs that do this.
Back in my day, you had to get my ex-wife to help you plagiarize a paper. By the way, shout out to my ex-wife helping me write my English papers. This is the new reality of professors having to deal with AI assignments being turned in.
It is. What do you do? I mean, I think it's too late to put the genie back in the bottle. You can't stand on the beach and get the tide to go out again. We've got to live with AI. But we've got to manage it. We've got to find ways of introducing students to digital literacy skills that make them more critical, because it's a kind of unreflective use of AI is not just getting you a grade, it's undermining your critical thinking skills, your ability to develop your academic writing skills, your whole way of being at university. The academic way of being at university is kind of undermined if you do this. So we need a coordinated response. I mean, a lot of universities some have said you can't use it. Others are trying to find a way of managing it. But, in the end, we've got to live with it, and we've got to find ways of assessing students that doesn't involve the kind of mass use of just plug in answers.
It reminds me of when I was doing stand-up comedy. I was talking to a mentor of mine, and she said, don't steal other comedians' jokes. Forget about the backlash. Forget about how the whole community will get mad at you if you steal a joke, how the audience gets mad at you. Forget about all that stuff. The reason you shouldn't steal other people's material is because in doing so, you're robbing yourself of learning how to write and become a better comedian.
Yeah.
And I feel like it applies by using AI to become a writer. You're really, at the end of the day, even if you can turn in the paper and get an okay grade and trick the teacher, you're denying yourself that growth as a writer. Isn't that why you're in school in the first place? Or in comedy, isn't that why you're on stage in the first place?
If you're using Gen AI, you're cheating yourself, because you're not using your mind to engage with the issues. You're not interacting with your tutor. You're denying yourself a sense of autonomy and a sense of self-respect as a writer. You're also failing to develop academic skills like evaluating sources for quality and reliability. In fact, ChatGPT has been found to hallucinate sources.
Sure.
So it might write you a beautiful essay, but a lot of the citations it gives you are going to be made up.
Well, Ken Hyland is an honorary professor at the School of Education and Lifelong Learning at the University of East Anglia in the UK. He's also currently the world's most cited linguist. Ken, I've enjoyed this chat. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David. Bye.
Up next, we'll need a veterinarian on to satisfy broadcasting decency standards as we answer the question, why does your dog eat, what your dog eats? The science behind it after the break. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Pet talk. It's like car talk, but it's with pets. Dr. Cliff Redford is here. He's a veterinarian, probably. I don't know. I haven't checked his... I'm like, do you have a card or something? Like, do they have a...
I got my diploma in the mail from Sally Struthers. You too can study at home to be a VCR repairman, a typewriter repairman, or a doctor in veterinarian medicine. That's how I did it.
An esteemed alumni from University of Phoenix Online, allegedly. I don't want to get sued by that university. Cliff Redford, welcome to the show. You join me most weeks to talk pets.
Yeah, man.
And this week, we've got a story for my heart. First, I thought you sent it to my producer, and I thought, you know me so well. You found a story that is just right up my alley and has to do with pets. And then when you told me that, you said, no. My producer, Danny, found it.
Yeah.
And our producer, the producer.
Danny is amazing.
She is a force of nature.
Okay.
She is just insane enough to want to work with me, but not so insane that she's intolerable. And she's great at her job. I mean, what more could you ask for?
That's like the best reference. All kidding aside, that's actually the best reference ever. I get like people, they come and they volunteer for me, and they're trying to get into vet school and whatnot. But every once in a while they'll come and they'll work or they'll volunteer for me, and then they'll ask for a reference letter for a very specific job, at a humane society or another clinic. And I've actually found I've had really good success finding them jobs by saying things like, trust me, you need to hire this person. They're hardworking and they're not a pain in the ass. and they generally get the job. Like,
yeah,
that's all you need, man.
Yeah. I mean, it does remind me of, I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, the 3 tenets of radio, like, Who are these people? What are they talking about? And why do I care? We are answering none of them. We're breaking all the rules.
All right.
Cliff's here. We're going to talk some great stories about your pets that are going to help you. And I'm David, and this is Cliff. And why do you care about this? Because you like your pet. Okay, we've done all that.
All right.
My old job, we had this saying, like, no jerk geniuses. And I know it's not quite the same as my endorsement for Danny or quite the same as what you said, but I think that there are these tenets, like there are qualities of people that make them great, but you would never want to work with them. Jerk geniuses.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Don't work for a jerk genius.
Yeah, like someone who's amazing at their job or amazingly smart, but they're terrible to work with is not someone you want to hire, you know?
Yeah.
Unless the job description is sit in a corner and do the work and talk to nobody, in which case, yes, you want to hire them.
Yeah, that's true. But if you can hire a jerk genius surgeon to replace your hip or do heart surgery, who cares? As long as they're skilled.
The team that they have to work with.
Oh, yeah, no, but I'm talking about as the patient.
Oh,
yeah,
well, still, like, if the surgeon's such a jerk that what's this person in the ER who helps the surgeon?
The nurse,
yeah,
the anesthesiologist. There's all kinds of
whatever. Yeah, if the anesthesiologist is like F you, or the nurse is like, I'm not handing that jackass a scalpel, you know, then it's not. But you'd have to be a pretty big jerk to not be. Yeah,
who knows?
Okay,
all right, we got this great story to talk about.
I know we've done a lot of dancing around how great this story is
about Valerie, the dog, and this is like straight out of Disney. This is going to be the next Disney movie. Valerie is this little Dachshund cross, basically a Dachshund, and she ended up going missing for 539 days in a secluded island in Australia called Kangaroo Island, and she survived. This is not a dog that is known for choking out kangaroos or catching wombats. And how did it survive? So again, this would make an amazing Disney story about survival and friendship and all these wonderful things, except experts believe that Valerie survived by eating the feces of other animals.
It's not about the poop you eat. It's about the friends you make along the way, Cliff, as I've always said.
There you go. Well, she had there was all great little terms here. A fecal feast for the senses. She was just recycling, David. She was just recycling.
But don't you get all kinds of worms and parasites? And like, aren't there objectively bad reasons for eating that?
There's absolutely bad reasons for eating. Yeah. So this is a condition. The technical term is coprophagia. And phagia means to eat. Copro, I don't know what that means. I guess just poop. And it's something that affects
coprophagia. Say that you love me.
It affects many species. Now, in some species, like the rabbit, they actually have to eat their own poop.
What?
To help them digest vitamin K.
What?
Yeah, so rabbits being herbivores, they get their vitamin K from the plants, and vitamin K, I'm going to screw this up a little bit, but vitamin K gets digested in the first pass through the intestinal tract into vitamin K1.
That's why they look like Cocoa Puffs, Cliff. They look appetizing.
That's right. So the rabbits will eat their poop so that they can digest it a second time, break down the dense plant wall, and then turn the vitamin K1 into vitamin K2.
Can we just quickly reiterate that you are a veterinarian, and so we are looking at this from a scientific angle? So what we're doing is not in the gutter, it's actually educational.
This is very educational.
Keep going.
No, this is important. And about 1 in 4 dogs eat their own or their friends' poops. I had greyhounds, and it doesn't matter that they're greyhounds, but they used to love if I forgot to clean up my cat's litter.
Oh.
And they would clean up. They would clean it up for me, and they would come out and they'd have a mouthful of like kitty litter, and they'd be licking their teeth and whatnot. And it was disgusting. So about 1 in 4 dogs do it. It generally starts when they're young, 4 months, 5 months, up to 10 months old. A lot of them do outgrow it, but there are dangers. They can spread parasites, or they can reinfest themselves with parasites. There's obviously bacteria. It's disgusting. And it's there's a whole slew of reasons. Wolves do it and foxes do it. So like other canids, the mama wolves will do it to clean up their den because they want to hide the scent of their newly born puppies.
It's the same reason cats bury their doo-doo, because they want to get rid of the scent, ostensibly.
Exactly. They're cats are predators and prey, so they recognize that being by prey animals, they have this adaptation or this instinct to hide their scent. It's another reason why maybe dogs roll in the poop of other animals.
I've seen that. I once, my friend, we were kind of out in the wilderness and her dog disappeared for like 5 hours and she was like, oh, he does this. We were at like some cabin somewhere and we were kind of freaking out on her behalf. She's like, no, he does this. And then he comes back with doo-doo all over his face. And this is his thing. And he did 5 hours later. It was wild.
Yeah. They roll in it and they look so happy and they're hiding their scent.
It's so funny to me when owners get so upset at their pets for doing pet things, you know, like licking themselves or like doing this. And it's like they get so upset, and especially when it's in public. And I'm like, dude, it's an animal. Like, chill out.
Yeah. But we like to think that little Princess, the Silky Terrier, is advanced. And they don't recognize that if little Princess was left on Kangaroo Island for 539 days, she would too eat her own poop for digestive reasons. There's still nutrients that don't fully get absorbed. And so there can be health reasons. You know, if a dog has like a pancreatic enzyme insufficiency, so they're not properly digesting all the nutrients in their food, so they're essentially starving, even though they're getting calories, they might eat their own poop because it's got those nutrients that they miss. So they're getting that second pass effect, kind of like the rabbit with the vitamin K. But they can do it due to boredom. They can do it that they are trying to hide their scent. A big one is if people incorrectly punish their pet for like having accidents in the house, then they're going to think they need to clean it up.
Well, we are here with a certified, accredited, and official veterinarian talking the reasons why your pets eat their doo-doo. And we're allowed to do it because it has educational merit. We'll be back with Dr. Cliff Redford. But in the meantime, check out his podcast, Vet Life with Dr. Cliff. We'll be back. I feel like there's more to say there. Probably.
No, it's good.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Oh my God, we're back with Dr. Cliff. I'm starting this segment with much more excitement than I did the last one. Dr. Cliff Redford is a veterinarian based out of the Toronto, Ontario, Canada area. We are here discussing pets and the reason, well, before I tell you why and what, this is an official chat, an educational chat, so please don't complain to the regulatory authorities. Cliff's a veterinarian, so what we're about to talk about is okay and allowed. We're talking the reasons your pet eats its own doo-doo. Cliff, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's always so stimulating.
Well, before I was like, really low energy. Now I'm really, it's not stupid. We were talking about a dog that disappeared on an island, Kangaroo Island, I believe.
Kangaroo Island in Australia, and little Valerie, the Dash and Cross, disappeared for 539 days. And the experts believe that she survived not off the good of the neighbors, because I don't think there are neighbors on this island, but she might have been eating the poop of her own production as well as other animals.
Delicious. We were discussing what not to do when your pet decides to go for its do.
Yeah, the big problem, first of all, one of the ways to avoid it, and there are many reasons why dogs do this, so this isn't always going to work, but if you erroneously punish your dog for peeing in the house or having bowel movements in the house, instead of just cleaning it up, you don't want to punish bad behavior, you just want to reward good behavior. But if you punish them you rub their nose in it, or you hit them with a newspaper, all the stuff we used to think was proper 30 or 40 years ago, it can create this sort of negative association. And the dog's gonna be like, all right, every time I poop, I'm going to get yelled at. So I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to hide the evidence. So it's a easier thing to avoid than it is to treat, because when you treat it, there's things like you can get a supplement called Forbid, which is basically MSG, monosodium glutamate. And for some reason, if you put it in your dog's food, it makes their poop taste bad, which means you then have to let
Wait, but when we put MSG in our food, it makes our food taste amazing.
Well, it might make the food taste great, but have you tried your poop afterwards? No, of course not.
No, I haven't yet. Thank you for the recommend. Well, now we're getting into the non-educational territory, Cliff. Someone's going to complain about this. We got to get back onto the educational track.
Okay, back on the educational track. So you can try a supplement called Forbid. There's talks about if you use like pineapple, so the juice or the pineapple pieces, the fiber changes the consistency of the stool. That might help. And there's even talks about Cert's breath mints. Those don't really work. And the issue is that the problem with any of this stuff is, or like the people will pour Tabasco sauce on the poop that's out in the garden instead of cleaning it up.
It's not, your dog's not meant to eat it is the problem, right?
I know. Well, you're trying to punish them. If I put Tabasco sauce on their poop outside, now you're going to eat it and it's going to burn your mouth. And yeah, that will sort of punish them. But then what happens is if the dog then finds a piece of poop that doesn't have the Tabasco sauce, it actually gets intermittent rewarded. And intermittent reward systems are more effective at encouraging behavior than constant reward systems. So you really have to stop it from the beginning. Make sure your dog's not bored. Don't punish them when they have accidents in the house. Talk to your veterinarian because there might be an anxiety issue. Make sure there's a lot of IQ stimulating toys and clean up as quickly as you can.
All right, you heard it here first.
There you go.
Intermittent reward systems are better than regular reward systems. Thanks.
Yeah, better than constant.
Thanks, Pavlov over here. Cliff, thank you. I would love to do the story with someone else, but I would lose my job and get all kinds of complaints. But because you're an official, accredited,
I am a doctor,
veterinarian with a diploma, as my dad would say, that you got in a Cracker Jack box. How's that for a baby boomer joke?
Yeah.
Everything we did was educational. Okay. On the internet, there has long been a debate. Would you rather battle 100 duck-sized horses? Okay. So like 100 tiny horses or one horse-sized duck, one massive 1,000-pound duck. You have to go to battle.
Well, see, the problem is I understand the physiology of birds, and you can't have a 1,000-pound bird.
It's not. Come on. This is a fictional world where a bird can be that big.
I would always take the 100 smaller creatures over the one very giant creature.
But horses, they could trample you, they could climb on you like little ants,
Yeah, I guess.
I would too. I think that's
are they intelligent, like normal horse intelligence versus a duck intelligence when the duck is giant?
Yes.
Horses are pretty smart. Ducks are not.
That's what I'm saying. 100 little smart beasts coming at you.
I don't know.
10 pounds each. That's 1,000 pounds. They could crush you.
Yeah.
Wait, that's 10,000. No, yeah, 1,000.
1,000.
Okay, not important. It leads us to our next viral debate.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
All right, gorilla versus 100 men. Let's just jump at it. I was actually talking to my boxing coach about this.
Yesterday's program, we had someone on that said gorillas show affection and bonobos show aggression. And when studying the two primates, their kind of reputations are not really deserved.
Okay. Yeah.
So through that lens, the lens of gorillas are maybe more sweethearts than we thought.
They are. I mean, they are passive vegetarians. And even the silverback gorilla, which is the alpha male and by far the biggest and strongest, they don't really fight their other brethren. They just thrash and slam their chests and rip down banana trees. So the problem with this whole 100 people versus one gorilla is, first of all, if I'm a gorilla and I see 100 men running at me, I'm taking off, right? Like if I'm a guy walking down the street and I see 100 50-pound children running at me screaming, even if I think I can take them, I'm running away. Like that just freaks you out, right? So you first have to, if you really want to determine this, you have to somehow trigger the gorilla's brain that it's going to fight to the death.
Well, a retreat is a win. Like if I come at you with my army and then your general's like, let's retreat, you've won.
Well, which one has won? I would think the army that attacked wins.
Exactly. So if 100 men approach one gorilla and the gorilla...
But that's not what this debate is about. This debate is about whether or not 100 men could kill a gorilla. And first of all, how are you going to get those 100 people to not freak out when the first 5 get ripped apart by the gorilla, right? So you got to change all of our brain dynamics. If we were all assimilated by the Borg, and including the gorilla and the Borg, this is like a Star Trek reference, the Borg were forcing us to fight, I think the gorilla would win. Because the reality is us humans have no weapons. We are not strong enough to hurt the gorilla. Could we gouge out its eyes? Maybe.
This is
but
awful,
not
Cliff.
very likely. We don't know how strong a male gorilla is, a silverback. There are some reports that they're 20 times stronger than people. I don't know about that. But what we do know is their bones are many times stronger than us. Their ligaments are many times stronger than us. Their bite strength is like 1,300 PSI, which is twice that of a savanna lion. So they can crush our bones with their hands. So if the gorilla knows a tiny bit of martial arts, just like most people...
PSI is people squishing index. Is that what that is?
Something like that.
It's pretty good. It took me a while, but I came up with something.
Like the whole issue is, why wouldn't the gorilla run away? How would you get all 100 people? Like if even one of you guys win, all of your ancestors get $1 billion, that's still not enough. Because a couple of people would get destroyed right away. And then everyone else is like, you know what, forget it. I don't like my ancestors that much. I don't even know them.
So you like the odds on the one gorilla?
If you could get into their brain and force them to fight to the death, yes. I believe a gorilla smashes they Hulk smash them. They just destroy the people.
Check out Dr. Cliff Redford's podcast, Vet Life with Dr. Cliff. Clifford, it's always a pleasure. Do you like being called Clifford? Not really.
I don't mind it. I was gotta say, I love that I went to veterinarian school and medical school, and I'm a doctor, and this is what we're talking about. I actually enjoy this.
I went to veterinarian school, and all I got to do with the media was this.
There you go. I like it. It's fun.
You got other things going on. Cliff, it's always a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, buddy.
After the break, we'll cover doom scrolling. Science now confirms that those images you look at online that are awful, they mess with your brain. They mess with your ability to focus, and they cling to your memory like something that clings a lot. I'm out of metaphors. So we'll look into why doom scrolling's bad and what you can do it in just a few moments. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit Venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always The Last Show with David Cooper.
And in doom scrolling news, yet another reason not to doom scroll. Science now confirms that disturbing images you see online aren't just a Debbie Downer, they mess with your brain. A new study shows that negative visuals ruin focus and cling to your memory like a bad breakup. I'm here with someone who worked on that study. His name is Dr. Michael Esterman. He's an investigator at the National Center for PTSD and an associate professor of psychiatry at the Boston University School of Medicine. Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start with the basics. What exactly is sustained attention in terms of your study? And why is it so easy to lose the minute someone posts something upsetting, like any piece of news these days?
Sure. Well, kind of simply put, the ability to sustain attention is to be able to stay focused on a task, stay focused on your goals, and at the same time resist all of the myriad of distractions that we have in the world. They can be distractions that are external. They can be thoughts that you have that are distracting. You also can be torn off task because you're bored. It's not very rewarding or interesting. You can also get fatigued at doing one particular thing. And in fact, it's very difficult for people to sustain attention for even a number of minutes. And it's really a big focus in my lab to understand why.
So if I'm buckling down to focus, like, I don't know, my work, and then I stare at my phone for 2 minutes and look at a really negative feed, like maybe something with police brutality or some awful protest that went awry, and then I decide, okay, I'm going to go back to my focus. Did that 3 minutes affect me, or was it just a little fun break that I took? Well, maybe not so fun.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of one of the questions that we've been trying to ask in these studies that we've been doing in the last couple of years, because we kind of observe clinically in a number of clinical populations and just sort of anecdotally in our lives that things that are upsetting tend to take us off task more for longer, and then they kind of stick with us for longer as well and make it harder for us to re-engage with what we were doing. And so we tried to design a task in a laboratory where we had people staying focused on a relatively monotonous, fairly boring task that was repetitive. And then we introduced these different kinds of distractors to them. We told them they have nothing to do with the task, ignore them, don't look at them. And sometimes they were perfectly pleasant or neutral, like a cat or a chair. And sometimes they were upsetting, like a dead cat.
Oh.
Or an upset child crying.
Oh, boy.
And so what we observed was kind of what we see in the real world or experience is that those more upsetting images, they disrupted people's ability to do the task. So we measure their performance, like things like how accurate they are at the task and the reaction time. But we also look to see how did it impact their mood. And by delivering these more upsetting images in the background, even though people weren't supposed to be paying attention to them, we found that even in a matter of a minute, people's mood felt worse. And later on, even a half an hour later, we asked them about these images. Could they remember ones they saw and didn't? The ones that were the most upsetting were the ones that stuck in their head the most.
This is kind of alarming in terms of a finding because there's no shortage of disturbing news out there. Like anywhere I look online, there's something disturbing. It seems like negative images linger longer in our minds. Why do you think our brains are basically like, I don't know, emotional hoarders when it comes to bad stuff, but we can just move on when it comes to the good stuff?
Well, I think that there's, there are circuits in the brain that help us determine or direct our attention or our processes towards things that are salient and important to us. And so a lot of things that are intense emotionally are things that maybe in a certain context we should orient to. So we work with veterans at the National Center for PTSD, and there's thought that in, say, a conflict, or if you're in war, it might be very important to respond to any kind of sound, image, or clue that something might be happening that's upsetting. But in the world, in our everyday sort of boring world, especially one that's surrounded with screens, all of the different upsetting things that we can see are not relevant to us. We shouldn't be captured by them, but maybe it's sort of hijacking this kind of system. I would also say that we also are, from an attentional perspective, a lot of people kind of frame, including our own work, we frame attention in terms of we direct it to things that have the most value to us. And if you're doing something that has very little value to you, it's very difficult and effortful to sustain attention. And I think that some people find value and reward in things that are emotional, even when those things are emotionally upsetting. Again, we clickbait is often things that enrage us.
You won't believe what happens next. Sorry, I had to say it.
Yeah. And so there may be some sense that I think, and again, worth more study, that these things that people click on, they often are negative. People want to read and be outraged and be activated. We see that even, before the social media era, people love to see horror movies, or we like to kind of, maybe in a controlled environment where we're not personally threatened, there's some reward to being upset.
It's funny you talk about being distracted from tasks that are of little value to you, but I feel like being a functional adult is being able to get through those tasks. Like, for example, I'm on the radio, but doing the show, there's prep, there's booking, there's all these monotonous things that aren't fun, that are easy to be distracted from. We need to kind of do the tasks that seem of little value to us. in order to, be productive. It's not something we want to be distracted from.
Well, they have more long-term value to us, right? So in the moment, reading this difficult paper, fixing your tech problem.
Doing your taxes.
Exactly, doing your taxes. Not very rewarding in the moment, but in the long run, you're either, you have some rewards, I got a refund, or your reward is simply that you're not in trouble and paying penalties for it. But it's harder for people to, this is sort of a different area of research, but an important point that rewards that are further off in the future are really devalued relative to things that are immediately rewarding. So, that's why you can say, I'll go to the gym tomorrow every day and never go to the gym.
We want that dopamine hit in the moment. Do positive images like cute cats, babies, do they help people focus at all, or are they just kind of neutral?
We didn't find any differences with the positive images. And I think that it actually is a challenging contrast between the two, because if we think of, so we measure people's subjective arousal to these images. And that's kind of that's a vague term we could define it a lot of ways. But I think if you think about it, if I show you, a dead animal, you have that visceral response like, oh man, gross.
Yeah.
But if I show you a cute animal, it's harder to elicit that like warm and fuzzy emotional body kind of experience. So, there are even researchers that try to match those things, but our positive images don't elicit that same kind of arousal. Other people have tried using pornographic images to try to be a proxy for, wow, okay, I've gotten this kind of, I've gotten this emotional response that also has this kind of visceral response. But I really don't think it's a great analog. And so I think that there's something inherent about maybe negativity and arousal that's hard to tease apart from just positive and negative.
What could we infer about modern life, especially with constant exposure to upsetting news and social media? I talked about doom scrolling when I introduced this chat. Could all these negative images quietly be wrecking our focus and mood on any kind of large scale?
It's interesting that you asked that, because we have another recent study. This is a collaboration with a number of investigators, where we had people turn their smartphones into dumb phones. So basically we had them install an app that turned off their mobile internet. So they could use their computer, but for their phone, they could just text and talk, and that was all. So old school. And people did that for 2 weeks. And people who did that were better able to sustain their attention just 2 weeks later of unplugging from their phone. And so it opens up a lot of these questions. What kinds of things did they stop doing? So there's a lot of reasons, right? They could have been stopping doing these things like putting distractions everywhere, but there's other possibilities too. It could also be that by eliminating those kinds of distractions, people engaged in other more positive activities. Maybe they hung out with their friends more, or maybe when they were watching that movie with their friends, they didn't have their phone in front of them, so they were able to be like, wow, it's a really good movie. And so there's lots of positive benefits that may have also driven that effect.
It's an off-topic takeaway, but I'm about to go investigate this dumb phone app and install it. Well, Mike, thanks for talking to me today about your study. This was a great chat.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Dr. Michael Esterman is an investigator at the National Center for PTSD and an associate professor of psychiatry at the Boston University School of Medicine. Up next, a new study shows that when we age, we reflect on our personalities less than we did when we were younger. But is that a good thing, a bad thing, or do we just feel more comfortable in our skin? That we'll look into in a few moments. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Do we mellow out with age? Do we feel more comfortable in our skin as we grow old, or do we just stop thinking about ourselves? Do we stop being self-reflective? Well, a new study says that older folks reflect less on their personalities as they age. Why is that, and is it a good thing? I'm here to discuss this with Gabriela Küchler, a psychology researcher at Heidelberg University in Germany. Gabriela, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
What do we mean when we talk about self-reflection in an academic paper? How is that different from just overthinking as I lay in bed trying to fall asleep?
Okay, so broadly speaking, self-reflection refers to every thought that we have about ourselves. It can be about our thoughts, about our behaviors, about how we are feeling. And overthinking might be more something like rumination, which is kind of a sub-form of self-reflection that has a very negative connotation often. And, overthinking might be a bit masked. It might not be directly about yourself, right? You might be thinking over and over again about a situation that you had with a supervisor or with your partner, about the negative aspects of it, and not so much about your role in this situation and so on.
So ruminating, overthinking, it's sort of like a more insecure subset or smaller part of self-reflection.
Yeah, exactly. It's an anxiety-driven kind of self-reflection, and or in psychology we also say neurotic. It's about the fear of doing something wrong, about making a bad impression on other people. And I think that's often what people are associating with self-reflection. But actually, the term self-reflection in psychology is quite neutral. And then you look into different facets. There are different ways to categorize it. And in our research, for example, we see rumination or this overthinking as one part, and another part can be more exploration. Like people are curious about themselves. They're curious about, what drives their behavior and how they got to be the person that they are.
Yeah. Curious about their own motivations, the kind of thing you might expect to do in talk therapy or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, what is interesting that self-reflection is a huge part of therapy, right? Mm-hmm. So it cannot be super negative. But what you do in therapy is you change the way how you self-reflect. And it's not just important for mental illness, like when people are actually already, kind of in a sphere where they really feel bad and are really ill. It's also very important for the development of personality traits in adulthood, because when we are adults, well, in Germany, we say 18 years onwards, our personality has already a certain stable way, but there's still room to change. And a lot of that happens in young adulthood, let's say roughly until 35 years. And then later on, it stabilizes a lot. So that's where this idea also came for us to think about, okay, why is that the case? Which mechanisms are behind that? Why older people don't change as much anymore?
And you found that it's because they aren't as self-reflective as they were when they were younger?
So it was actually very interesting in the project that we did. So one idea was maybe they just think about their behaviors less, about their feelings less. So they don't integrate new situations as much. I mean, one idea is also they just don't get as much into new situations, because one finding that is a little bit established already is that for your personality traits to change, you need to show new behaviors. You need to behave in a different way. Let's say you want to become more extroverted. You want to become more outgoing with other people. Then you need to start acting in a different way. But what we think in research also is important, that you can also change the image you have about yourself. To think about yourself as less shy, to think, I'm a person who can get along with many people, who can, get chatty with others and so on. So it was kind of the idea that maybe with older adults, it's just different. Like they don't think as much anymore about these experiences and either don't change their behavior at all. And in a second step, maybe don't integrate it into their self-image again. And so we were looking into a large sample from Germany and the US, where we were actually testing if older people don't self-reflect as much on themselves as younger people.
And what did you find?
What we found was an interesting pattern, because we found on self-reflection that is explorative, like thinking about my life in a philosophical way, or, asking myself why I do things. Here we find very, very small differences in older and younger adults. Like it's very similar. But when we look at rumination, like this negative way of thinking about yourself, younger adults do that a lot more. And we also found that has a lot to do with emotional stability, because older folks are a lot more relaxed already about their life and, are not as easy challenged with setbacks and so on. And so when we controlled for that, we also found that actually younger folks that are also very emotionally stable also don't ruminate as much. And then we took a closer look at what about self-reflections that are directly targeted at our personality. And there we also found that older adults don't think about that as much anymore.
It sounds like there are some advantages to being less reflective as we age, like stability, comfort in our own skin, that kind of thing. But it also seems like we have this major disadvantages where we can't make positive changes or be adaptive or, shape ourselves into the people we want to be.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one part is that if you think too much about yourself or you don't, learn to be your best friend first, I think that's important for self-reflection. Like, don't go into that judging yourself and try to maintain it in a positive way. And if you reach that level to do that, it can really be adaptive. You can adapt to change more easily. You can learn new strategies. And in older adults, in our studies, we don't find that as much. But interestingly, we also had a training study where people learned how to be more emotionally stable. And we saw that older adults, once they learned how to do the stuff and once they got engaged, they just did the same thing as younger adults. And they also increased a lot in their emotional stability. So I think, there's this saying about an old dog can't learn new tricks. I think that's not true. We stay adaptive our whole life. We can always learn new things, and you just have to be interested and get into it.
I mean, curiosity about yourself, being self-reflective. I go to therapy once a week now. It used to be twice a week. I was a little bit more cuckoo. But yeah, self-reflection is like so important to stay in touch with as we age. It's not something to just turn our backs on, I guess.
Exactly, because it's not like you find yourself once and then that's it, It's like there's constant change in your environment and just go with it.
Yeah, I've been 150 different people from the age of like 20 to 38, and that's not such a bad thing. Gabriela, thanks for talking to me about this. This was an interesting, illuminating chat.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
Gabriela Küchler is a psychology researcher at Heidelberg University in Germany. Coming up next, a continuing series where we look at jobs that you and I probably could not do, but might like to do. We'll talk to someone who is a referee for 20 years in the WWE. That's right, professional wrestling. And I just want to know, when you're in the ring with giants slamming each other, how do you not get crushed?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Oh, such a clutch pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom, too. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
The GOAT.
Save up to 50% with minimum purchase at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Prepare to have your mind blown as we delve into the complexities of relationships, explore the cutting edge of science, and celebrate the bizarre and beautiful absurdity of the world around us. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Today, in our continuing series on jobs that I think a lot of us couldn't do, I'm here with someone, and his job is so exciting and fun for me. He's a retired referee from the WWE. You can find his book, 3 Count My Life in Stripes as a WWE referee. That's available wherever books are sold. His name is Jimmy Korderas. Jimmy, I am so excited to talk to you about being a referee in wrestling. This is like the most fun job ever.
It is. For me, it was the most fun job ever. It wasn't something that I planned to do, but I loved wrestling so much, and I figured I wanted to do something. I just wanted to be involved in the business in some form or fashion. And then this, right place, right time. I got asked if I wanted to referee, and I said, absolutely, yes.
I look at people who have highly specialized jobs, whether they're creatives or performers or whatever, and I always think, was this like a calling for you, or did you fall into it? I fell into radio. Like if a friend hadn't invited me on his radio show about 10 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I love that you just kind of like eased your way into it. Why the interest in wrestling in the first place, though?
It was just something I gravitated to. When I was a kid growing up in Toronto, we had so much wrestling on television on Saturdays, especially on weekends. And we got so much of it from different areas of Canada and the United States because of all the affiliate stations we were getting from Buffalo on TV and that sort of thing. And I got taken to a show when I was like 8, 9 years old here in Toronto. It was an outdoor show at Varsity Stadium. And my neighbor, his father took us, my best friend at the time, Billy Kufis. I haven't seen him in ages, but I hope he's okay. And I fell in love with it. I had my 2 passions. I had, of course, hockey and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and pro wrestling.
So you like having your heart broken, that's the Leafs, and then you like watching people slam each other down, the WWE.
Exactly. As one of the few people who was still alive the last time they won the Cup, I'm hoping this year. I've got my fingers crossed.
My dad was like a toddler. Or when it was like it was in 1837, I think, or was it 1725? It was the year 4. I think Jesus had just been born.
Yeah, I don't think we had seceded from England at the time, so...
I'm not even sure England existed. It was just like druids and stuff wandering around Stonehenge. Okay, you're in the ring. There are giants slamming each other around you. How do you not get hurt? That's always like, how do you manage to get out of the way? That's my biggest question here.
That's a part of the art of being a referee, is knowing when to stay out of the way. And there are times where you do get hurt, sometimes unintentionally. A lot of the times it is intentionally because it's part of, okay, cat's out of the bag. We all know. Is predetermined. So when you see a referee go down 99.9 times out of 100, it was meant to happen. But there is that odd time where you try to get out of the way. And some of these guys are so athletic and so big, and they're moving in breakneck speeds. You just get caught.
Knowing when to get out of the way, I think, is an important part of every job. Like in radio, when a guest is saying something amazing, like get out of their way. Imagine you're a lawyer in court and there's someone on the stand saying something you need them to say and you're leading them to it. Get out of the way while you can. I feel like that's the advice no one gives you about being great at your job, getting out of the way when you're supposed to.
Yeah, and you give us the perfect analogy. It's like an announcer, like even in wrestling, the commentators, knowing when to lay out and let the action tell the story. Yes, the announce team is there to help tell the story, but you're letting them sometimes in the ring, the visual or the audio, whatever it is.
You mentioned 99.9% of the time, if a ref goes down, that was part of the show. Mm-hmm. So you're part actor, you're part stunt person, you're part actual referee. All that multitasking, does it get hard to manage?
Once you get in a groove and you get comfortable with what you're doing, no, and it's harder depending on the talent you're in there with the ring. A lot of guys are so smooth. I hate to put it this way. It isn't an easy job, but it feels like a night off with some of these guys because you get to work with them, especially back when I was there. We worked so often because of those house show schedules and on televised events. We ran like 5 times a week.
Wow, well-oiled machine then.
Yeah. So you were in there with everybody and you got accustomed to them and they got accustomed to you and they felt comfortable and everybody was, and sometimes a little too comfortable.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
There had to be moments when things didn't go according to plan, when things went off the rails, like someone gets hurt or something funny or weird happens. What are some of those moments that really were highlights of your career?
Oh my goodness. Where do I begin? The hard parts are when someone does, it isn't ballet, as they say. And it is very physical. Yes, like I've said, it is predetermined, and we all know that. But at the same time, some of the impact these guys take is incredible. I can't believe it. Their bodies are, they call it bump calluses. You feel them, but the more you do it, the less you feel them. But you feel them that night afterwards more than you do in the ring, if that makes any kind of sense.
It does.
But as far as the fun stuff is the fun I love because, I was blessed to work with people like Owen Hart, who just was infamous for ribbing people. I mean, to this day, there were a few times in the ring where I would be refereeing his match and somehow he would untie my shoes. And I would never catch him. He was like David Copperfield in there. And then just out of somewhere, he'd have somebody in a headlock on the ground. He'd go, Jimmy, your shoe's untied. And I'd look at him. How did he do it again?
Were these things that the camera caught, or this is just like jokes between you two?
No, you kept those for the live events where there's no cameras, because if you did it on TV, probably the boss would get hot.
There was a time where I did get in your way just a few moments ago when you said there's times when these wrestlers get a little bit too close. And then I just asked you the next question, but I've been curious this whole time. What are those times where they get a little too close?
Well, because you have to look like an authority figure in the ring. It's just like boxing. When they get tied up in the ropes, you're supposed to get in there and like physically try to separate them. Mm-hmm. Wrestling, we try to portray that illusion of a combat sport, and the referee has to look like an authority figure. And when situations like that happen, you have to get in there and get between these guys. And as you can see, some of them are a lot bigger than I am.
These are not small men.
No. And they are in a zone. You know what I mean? So that, yes, they are going to cooperate, but at the same time, trying to get them to cooperate sometimes because they're so fired up. I'm like, guys, move back, because I can't do this.
There's a scene in Seinfeld where George Costanza loses his job, and then they're sort of brainstorming what he could do. And then he said, well, I could be a baseball announcer. And then Jerry's like, you kind of like, it's very difficult to get that job. Like, you can't just walk into a stadium and say, they kind of give those to former ball players and this, that, and the other. But it gets me thinking, like, there's certain jobs out there and you think to yourself, how on earth does someone get it to someone who wants to be a wrestling referee, like for the WWE? How would they even get a job like that?
Well, it's different now. It's so corporate and so structured. You have to train somewhere ahead of time. You have to learn the job, and then if they are interested in you, if they think that you have something that they could use in the future, then you go. Now they have the developmental system, so they will teach you how to work television, because refereeing on television is completely different from refereeing on non-televised events. We had this thing where we said they had the hard camera set up usually, and you would work the horseshoe. We would call it. You would work the 3 sides of the ring, that's where you would move and do your job that way without trying to cross in front of the hard camera and cross in front of the guys, because they were the stars. You didn't want to block them.
Yeah. So there's kind of a pathway to it for those interested. Interesting.
They have tryouts and the whole bit now.
Wow. Well, your book is called 3 Count: My Life in Stripes as a WWE Referee. That's available wherever books are sold. Jimmy Korderas, thanks so much for joining me. This was fun and illuminating and just a fun exercise on jobs that a lot of people could never do. I appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks. We got to do this again.
I would love it. That is the show, as ever. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, but you missed some of the program, or you want to listen to our back catalog, good news, The Last Show is available as a podcast. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com. And there you can find out more details, subscribe, check out our social media, and click some stuff, see what happens. We'll be back next week with an important update from my tiny black cat, Tomato. I'm David Cooper, and this is, well, it's not the first show.
Well, you've heard me on the radio and you've listened to my podcast. Well, now you can watch me on YouTube for thought-provoking conversation, fearless interviews that you won't get anywhere else. The Ben Mulroney Show every single day. So go to YouTube, subscribe to The Ben Mulroney Show, and never miss an episode.